Hi, this is Raj Kumar, Associate Professor of Instruction, Computer Science Department, University of Texas. In the previous class, we were talking about the penetration testing. We have seen the introduction part of the penetration testing. In today's class, we are going to talk more about the first phase of the penetration testing. So, in the pen test, or we call the penetration testing, or sometimes we call the PN test, the penetration test. In this, it is having four phases. So among that, the first phase or first step is your the reconnaissance. So this in the penetration testing, as said, the penetration testing, it is having four phases. The first phase is reconnaissance phase, second phase is scanning phase, third is exploitation, fourth is the post exploitation maintaining access phase. So, in today's series, we are going to talk about the reconnaissance phase, the first phase. So, where we are going to discuss the introduction part of the reconnaissance and what are the different tools which you use to gather the information for penetration testing or for a pen tester that we are going to discuss this. So basically, you can see in most cases, the people who attend the hacking workshops or classes have a basic understanding of few security tools. So typically, these students have used a port scanner to examine a system, or maybe they have used Wireshark to examine network traffic. Some have even played around with exploit tools like Metasploit. So, unfortunately, most beginners do not understand how these tools fit into the grand scheme of a penetration test. As a result, their knowledge is incomplete. So, we are going to discuss some of the methods which ensures that you have a plan and know what to do next, right? So, come, let us see the to stress the importance of using and following a methodology. It is often beneficial to describe a scenario that helps demonstrate both the importance of this step, recurrence step, and the value of the following steps in the penetration testing, a complete methodology when conducting a pen test cases. So assume you are an ethical penetration tester working for a security company. You can just see the scenario here. You just assume in this scenario, and then your boss walks over to your office and hands you a piece of paper. I just got off of the that piece of paper is getting the information that I just the got off the phone with the CEO of that company, and she wants my best employee to pen test her company. So that's you. So our legal department will be sending you an email confirmation. We have all of the proper authorizations and insurance to do the pen test. So you not accepting this job, that's the case, and he leaves the and just giving this information, and your boss leaves. So you flip over the paper, a single word is written on the paper, Singress. On the paper, Singress. It is a company you have never heard of before, and no other information is written on this paper. So then what you will do? What you will do? So that's the question, right? So just boss is given you the information that I just got a call from one CEO company and they want the pen tester. So what you will do that? So in the first step in every job is research. The more thoroughly you prepare for a task, the more likely you are to succeed. The guys who created Backtrack and the Kali Linux are fond of quoting the Abraham Lincoln's one, the said one. What is that? It is very common for that. So if I had 6 hours to chop down a tree, I spent first 4 hours of them to sharpening my axe. What it means? First 4 hours he's trying to gather a lot of information, means sharpening the axe, and after that, within 2 hours, he's going to finish. So this is a perfect introduction to both the pen testing and the reconnaissance phase. So in the pen testing, the first phase is reconnaissance phase. What is this reconnaissance phase? You Reconnaissance phase is also known as information gathering. Also known as the information gathering. The more time you spend collecting information on your target, the more likely you're to be successful in the later phases. What are the later phases? As we saw, in your scanning phase, then your exploitation, and then your post exploitation. In these phases, that is second, third, and fourth phases. So ironically, the reconnaissance, you can also call as your recon, is also one of the most overlooked, underutilized, and misunderstood steps in penetration testing methodology. So it is overlooked because newcomers are never formally introduced to the concept, its rewards, or how the results of good information gathering can be vital in later steps. So that's the reason, right? So, so I said that it is possible that this phase is overlooked, as said, because the newcomers are never formally introduced to the concept, right? It rewards or how the results of good information gathering can be vital in the later steps. So it is also possible that this phase is the overlooked because it is the least technical and often the least exciting. So oftentimes, people who are new to hacking tend to view this phase as boring and unchallenging. So nothing could be further from the truth. So although it is true that there are very few good automated tools that can be used to complete recon. So once you understand the basics, it is like an entirely new way of looking at the world. A good information gathering is made up of equal parts, like hackers, social engineer, and private investigators. The absence of well defined rules of engagement also distinguishes this phase from all other phases, like from scanning phase, exploiting phase, and even post exploiting phases. So this is in stark contrast to the remaining steps in our methodology. We can discuss the remaining phases like scanning phases and exploitative phases later. But there is a specific order and a clear series of steps that need to be followed in order to properly port scan a target. Properly port scan a target. Right? So that is what said the good information gathering that made up of the equal parts like hackers, social engineering, and the private investigators. So what is saying? What is digital reconnaissance then? In that, so learning how to conduct the digital reconnaissance is a valuable skill for anyone living in today's world. For pen testers and the hackers, it is invaluable. So the penetration testing world is filled with great examples and stories of how good the reconnaissance, the reconnaissance single-handled allowed the tester to fully compromise a network or a system. So consider one case in this example you can see the case in the first one. Assume we have two different criminals who are planning to rob a bank. The first criminal buys a gun and runs into the first bank. He finds a loan, yelling and says that, "Hands up, give me all your money." It is not hard to imagine that the scene would be complete chaos, and even if the bungling and bungler managed to get away. So it is probably would not take long for the police to find him, arrest him, and send him to the prison. Contrast, this is to nearly every the Hollywood movies in existence today. So where criminals spend months. Second case, when criminals spends the money in the second case, in this where the criminals spend the months they're planning, scheming, organizing, and reviewing details before the heist. So they spend time getting weapons anonymously, planning escape routes, and reviewing the schematic of the building. So they visit the bank to determine the position of the security cameras, make note of the guards, and determine when the bank has the most money or is the most vulnerable. So clearly, the second criminal has the better chance of getting away with the money. So it should be obvious that the difference between these two examples is preparation and homework. So hacking and penetration testing are the same. You cannot just get an internet protocol address and start running Metasploit. So, well, you can, but you are probably not going to be very effective. So, just recall these examples. The example which used to begin this, the Reconnaissance. So, you had been assigned to complete a penetration test, but were given very little information to you to go on. As we just saw, your boss just came and just informed you, just go on. Very little information is given to you. So what exactly will you do then? So that so as a matter of fact, you are given only the company name, Singress, only one word. The $1 million question for every aspiring hacker is, how do I go from a single company name to owning the systems inside the network? So when we begin, we know virtually nothing about the organization. We do not know entire website, physical address, or number of employees. We do not know their public IP addresses or the internal IP scheme. We know nothing about the technology deployed, operating systems used in that company, or defense in that place. So, very first step is your Reconnaissance step. In the previous example, whatever we got, Reconnaissance step. So that is the first step. So in the Reconnaissance step, with step one, we begins by conducting a thorough search of public information. Some organization calls this open source intelligence, OSINT. So the great thing about this phase is that in most cases, we can gather a significant amount of data without ever sending a single packet to the target. Although it should be pointed out that some tools or techniques used in Reconnaissance do in fact send information directly to the target. So it is important to know the difference between which tools to do and which tools do not touch the target. There are two main goals in this phase. First, we need to gather as much information as possible about the target. Second, we need to sort through all the information gathering and create a list of attackable IP addresses or uniform resource locator, that is URLs. It is the URLs that is most important. So these are two important the information which any penetration can do in the very first phase, right? So then next, it was pointed out in our previous lecture that a major difference between the black hat and white hat attackers is authorization only. Step 1 provides us with a prime example, the prime example of this, who is white hat penetration tester and black hat one. Okay, white hat and black hat tester, that is very important, right? But both type of hackers, the black hat and white hat hackers, conduct excessive reconnaissance on their targets. So unfortunately, malicious hackers are bound by neither scope nor authorization. When ethical hackers conduct the research, they are required to stay within the confines of the test, that is within the scope. So during the information gathering process, it is not unheard of for a hacker to uncover a valuable system that is related to the target but not owned by the target. So even if the related target could provide access into the original organization without prior authorization, a white hat hacker is not allowed to use or explore this option. For example, let us assume that you are doing a pen test against a company and you determine that their web server, which contains customer records, is outsourced or managed by a third party. If you find a serious vulnerability on the customer's website, but you have not been explicitly authorized to test and use the website, you must ignore it. So the black hat attackers are bound by no such rules and will use any means possibly to access the target system. In most cases, because you are not authorized to test and examine these outside systems, you will not be able to provide a lot of details. However, your final report must include as much information as possible about any system that you believe put the organization at risk. But some additional information should be required in this case. What is that? The information required as a pen tester when you uncover risk that fall outside the scope of your current engagement. That uncover risk is fall outside the scope of your the current engagement. In that case, what one need to do? You should make every effort to obtain proper authorization and expand the scope of your test. Oftentimes, this will require you to work closely with your client and their vendors in order to properly explain potential risk. In order to explain potential risk. So this is very important part. So you need to work closely with them. So then, to be successful, to be the successful at Reconnaissance, you must have a strategy. So nearly all facets of information gathering leverage the power of the internet. So a typical strategy needs to include both active and passive reconnaissance. This is very important, active and passive reconnaissance. Right? So what is this active reconnaissance and what is the passive reconnaissance? Right? The active reconnaissance, you can see the active reconnaissance. So remember this, the target is the one for whom we are going to test. We are going to work this reconnaissance part. So in active reconnaissance, that includes interacting directly with the target. It is important note important to note that during this process in active recurrence, when you are directly interacting with the target may record our IP address and log our activity. So this has a higher likelihood of being detected if we are attempting to perform a pen test in a stealthy fashion. Whereas the another case is your passive reconnaissance. So in passive reconnaissance, it makes use of the vast amount of information available on the web. When we are conducting passive reconnaissance, we are not interacting directly with the target, and as such, the target has no way of knowing or recording or logging our activity. So, as mentioned, the goal of Reconnaissance is to collect as much information as possible on your target. So, at this point in the penetration test, no detail should be overlooked, regardless of how innocuous it may seem. So, while you are gathering information, it is important to keep your data in a central location. It is very important. You must keep in a central location. Why you need to keep this in the central location? The question, right? So whenever, by keeping the data in a central location, whenever possible, it is helpful to keep the information in electronic format, and this allows for quick and accurate search later on. So digital records can be easily stored, edited, copied, imported, pruned, and mined. So even so, every hacker is a bit different, and there is still some penetration testers who prefer to print out all the information they gather. So each piece of paper is carefully cataloged and stored in a folder. So if you are going to use the traditional paper method, be sure to carefully organize your records. So paper-based information gathering binders on a single target can quickly grow to several hundred pages. But in most cases, the first activity is to locate the target's website. In our example, we would use a search engine to look for the Singer's website. We look for the Singer's website, right? So this is the introduction of your what you call the reckonings. So as we are saying that, come to the said we our in most cases we first the activity is to locate the target's website. So what is that? Even though we recently discussed some importance of creating and using the sandboxed hacking lab in previous lecture to ensure no traffic leaves your network, right? So the target is you just collect much information from the website. So for that, the HT track website copier, the HT track website copier is one which is used to gather the lot of information about the target. So typically we begin the reconnaissance in the pen testing step, one we called by closely reviewing the target's website. In some cases, it may be helpful to use a tool called the HT track to make a page by page copy of the website. So HT track is a free utility that creates an identical offline copy of the target website. So the copied website will include all the pages, links, pictures, and code from the original website. However, it will reside on your local computer. Utilizing a website copying tool like H2Track allows us to explore and what you call thoroughly mine the website offline without having to spend additional time traipsing around on the company's web server. This is the one kind of, we can say, that cloning part. So this is the very important one to work on the target, the missing one, this tool. So let us, just discuss few things about this H2 tracker. Uh, so it is important to understand that the more time you spend navigating and exploring the target's website, the more likely it is that your activity can be tracked and traced, even if you are simply browsing the site. So remember, anytime you interact directly with a resource owned by the target, there is a chance you will leave a digital footprint behind. So advanced penetration testers can also run automated tools to extract additional or the hidden information from a local copy of a website. So H2 track can be downloaded directly from the company's website that you can see from here to use or cloning that one, right? So if we want to install installing for Windows is as simple as downloading the installer.exe and clicking next. If you want to install the H2 track in Kali or your Linux attack machine, you can connect to the internet as the we described in the introduction part of the penetration. You just open the terminal and you just give the command that in the open terminal and just give the command that sometimes you need to write sudo apt get install h2 tracker, install h2 tracker. So please note, there is also a graphical user interface version of H2 Tracker, but for now we will focus on the terminal version. So if you prefer to use the graphical user interface, you can always install it at a later date. But once the program is installed, you can run it by opening the terminal and typing just the HT tracker itself in the terminal itself, right? So then what happens when you start running this the H3 tracker. So before proceeding, it is important to understand that cloning a website is easy to trace and often considered highly offensive. So never run this tool without prior authorization. After starting H2 track from the terminal, the program will guide you through a series of basic questions before it begins to copy the target's website. In most cases, you can simply hit the enter to accept the default answer. So at a minimum, you will need to enter a project name for this. So you need to enter this project name and valid URL to copy. Copy this one. Right? So when the H2 track completes the process, you will be presented with a message that the terminal that says done. Then, if you are using the Kali, you just accept the default options. H2 track will place the cloned site into the directory where you mentioned to store in your local machine, that is the root, websites, and project name, whatever project name that you are giving, right? And then you can simply use the Firefox can be found by navigating the application menu on your desktop and just opening a terminal by just giving in the Firefox you just give this command that root website's project name. So when you make a copy of the target website or you simply browse the target in real time, it is important to pay attention to details. So you should begin by closely reviewing and recording all the information you find on the target's website. So oftentimes, with very little digging, you will be able to make some significant findings, including physical address and the locations, phone numbers, email addresses, hours of operations, business relationships, that is partners, employees' names, social media connections, and other public information, so that you can gather the lot of information from there by closely reviewing all the records. Said the physical address, phone numbers, email addresses, hours of operations, the business relationships, employee names, social media, and other gathering information. These are very important in the first phase of your pen test part. So why this information is more important when conducting the pen test? So when conducting a pen test, it is important to pay special attention to things like news or announcements. Companies are often proud of their achievements and unintentionally leak useful information through these stories. So company mergers and the acquisitions can also yield valuable data. This is especially important for expanding the scope and adding additional targets to our penetration test. So even the smoothest of acquisitions creates change and disarray in an organization. So there is always a transition period when companies merge. So this transition period provides us with the unique opportunity to take advantage of the change and confusion. Even if the merger is old news or goes off without a hitch, the information still provides value by giving us additional targets. So merger and the sibling companies should be authorized and included in the original target list as they provide a potentially gateway in the organization. So that is very important part. So these things are very important. You need to go through the news and announcement to gather a lot of information. So then, uh, so finally, it is important to search and review any open job posting for the target company. So technical job posting often several very detailed information about the technology being used by an organization. Many times you will find specific hardware and software listed on the job openings. So do not forget to search for your target in the nationwide job banks as well. For example, assume you come across a job requisition looking for a network administrator with Cisco ASA experience. From this from this job post, which is created by this Cisco, what kind of information that you can gather? Right? First, uh, you can draw from this post you can draw some immediate conclusions and make some educated guesses. Like first, you can be certain that the company either use or is able to use a Cisco ASA firewalls. Second, depending on the size of the organization, you may be able to interfere that the company does not have or is able to lose or someone with the knowledge of how to properly use and configure a Cisco ASA firewall. In either case, you have gained valuable knowledge about the technology in place. So in most cases, in most cases that you find in gathering information, in most cases, once we have thoroughly examined the target's website, we should have a solid understanding of the target, including who they are, what they do, where they are located, and a solid guess about the technology they use. Armed with this basic information about the target, we can conduct some passive reconnaissance. It is very difficult, if not impossible, for a company to determine when a hacker or penetration tester is conducting passive reconnaissance. This activity offers a low risk, high reward situation for attackers. So recall that passive reconnaissance is conducted without ever sending a single packet to the target system. Once again, our weapon of choice to perform this task is the internet. We begin by performing exhaustive searches of our target in the various search engines which are available. So, although there are many great search engines available today, when covering the basics of the hacking and penetration testing, we will focus on Google. Google is very, very good at its job. So that's the one. So then, how this Google is going to be help us, right? So as said, there is a reason why the companies stack trades for $400 to $600 a share. Spiders from the companies aggressively and repeatedly score all corners of the internet cataloging information and send it back to the Google servers. So the company is so efficient at its job that oftentimes hackers can perform an entire penetration test using nothing but Google. So at DEF CON 13, John Long rocked the hacker community by giving a talk titled "The Google Hacking for Penetration Testing." So, if you are interested in penetration testing, it is highly suggested that you watch the John Long's video and take a look at the Google hacking football. Right? So, in this Google Drives, in this Google Drive, how it will help to us, the Google Drives, the basic one is the practicing using the Google Foo. Google Foo. So this is another tool which is used to gather the information. That is the first phase of your penetration testing. How it works and what is the use of that one. That we are going to we try to discuss this in the next the lecture. So thank you.